Afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever in the world you may be. I am back with the solo stream finally. Shout out to Crypto Boogie for giving me some shit the other week. So I'd like you to get off your ass and stream it. Also, shout out to my buddy Bubba Dubs for reminding me, hey bro, you seem to be neck deep in a lot of things. Why don't you get on stream and talk about it? And so here we are. Hope you all are doing well. Had some topics I've been discussing with some people in the background relative to potential PulseX and Pulse performance and let's say Inc. and Hex, eHex, pHex, and the like. So I wanted to hop on stream and talk about a few of these different things as I've mapped some things out. Also, shout out to Crypto Graphics for doing a major part of the initial breakdown. I got his link to his video down in the description. Please go check him out. I want to give credit where credit's due since he inspired a lot of tonight's content. I just tried to kick it up to the next level. So while we get underway here, let me see who we got rolling through. My brown brother from another mother, Boogie. What's good, man? Appreciate the support. And Art Suave Angelo, the most fragrant men in crypto. So Boogie's probably the one who smells good. As I mentioned earlier, I probably smell like cigars, coffee, and German Shepherd on that front. So, but appreciate the support, Art. And Smooth Brain passing through. Smooth, appreciate it, man. You're definitely going to want to catch this one on the replay. I think this is going to be some real interesting content for you in terms of just some things to watch and observe in the market as you try to figure out, hey, what do I think my PulseX, Richard Hart token bags, ecosystem bags might do? And not just the specific tokens, but also some of the ideas I'm going to lay out for when you maybe start trying to project your own price targets, moon math on any other number of other tokens on that front. And let's see, we got Create. What's going on, Create? Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. So cool. Let's get down to some different elements here. And yes, you can catch me on Boogie Stream tomorrow as well. We'll take a look at some charts. Boogie will break down some TA. I will pretend to know what I'm talking about, and we'll just we'll wing it. We'll do it live. Cool. So all right, now that I've acknowledged again, go check out Crypto Graphics because again, he broke down a lot of the information on the foundational level. And I just tried to add some salt and spice and some other sprinkles and the like to it. So while we get down into the weeds on this stuff, let me start a screen share and we'll get rocking on some stuff. All right. So a lot of this is going to trace back to some things Richard Hart has mentioned on his Twitter. And let me start us with this one over here. And this is from a tweet he made back in March 19th on this topic. And I'm not going to read through every single bit of it. I'm just going to kind of highlight some of the major elements here. He talks about how PulseX works and pricing moves through PulseX liquidity. Price moves as a square. And so he breaks down, if you've got this amount of liquidity on the DAI side of things, double up the DAI, price goes up 4x. Then he talks about how arbitrage may work. And like, long story short, every time you double the liquidity, price does a 4x. So that's the overall key relationship on that front. He also gets into some aspects of what he is going to call reflexivity. That has to do with a lot of the binding and liquidity pool tie-ins in Hart's Law. So certain tokens move and then other tokens get dragged up or conceivably down with it. Also keeping in mind, one of the backdrops, just keep this kind of running in the back of your brain as we talk about some of these different items, and I'll tie it all together by the end of tonight's stream. It would be, this is not going to happen in a vacuum. They're going to be arbitrage bots. People are going to take profit. New users are going to come in. I've outlined on some different streams how I think we could do like a 10,000 to 14,000x strictly based on user count. I'm going to come at it from a different angle tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can do buku numbers potentially with the OA, SAC wallets, Richard, the powers that be on that chain, handling some different elements and making some different key money moves on that front. So again, key takeaway at this point in time is the liquidity, according to Richard. Every time you double that, price goes up a 4x on that. But keep in mind, it won't happen in a vacuum. I'm not necessarily getting into all the estimations of, okay, this percentage of users would take profit at this point, new users coming on chain. We can maybe look at that in some future streams. I just wanted to give some solid foundational elements on that for this evening. So let's get to the next stretch here on this one. And Hey, what's going on, Nelly? Appreciate you rolling through, man. Cool. Let me slightly change my layout here and we'll continue forward on this one. So next up would be if Richard just highlighted every time we do a 2x on liquidity, 4x, we do a 4x on price, then let me, I'm going to switch this up a little bit over here. Let me go this route instead. It's going to be narrating a lot more on this one. Let's rock with this methodology. So if I hop over to PulseX, for those not familiar with PulseX, in this case, I'm just pulling it live off of this PC for my streaming side of things. You can come over to PulseX, click the ellipsis over here and go to info. It'll take you to this page. It'll periodically refresh on some different elements of it here. And you'll be able to see things like what is the overall liquidity and tokens in the pool and the like. I'm going to make some very blanket assumptions this evening. As Richard previously called out DAI, ETH, USDC, USDT, my assumption will be all of the ETH, USDT, USDC, and DAI will be applied to some of the calculations tonight. It's not quite that clean on it, but just for conversation's sake, it should get us on the dance floor on that front. So, all right, next up, since again, we've talked about double liquidity, 4x the price, I just outlined some of the basic elements I'm using to determine the overall liquidity today based on ETH, USDC, USDT, and DAI on that front. Then let's hop over and take a look at what the pulse price is this evening. So I've got two potential things I'm eyeballing here. I'm not really concerned with the overall price movement on the chart in and of itself. What I did is I tagged in two lows on this particular chart. Let me hide some of this friggin' clutter. In this case, I took a look at what the day one low is, where we had four zeros and 2766. I'm just going to call it 2766. And then we had a September 4th low we made on 3101. So I guess the real question for us is, are we going to factor in this day one low or are we going to take the September 4th low? I'll incorporate both of them just so people are aware of what some of the claims could be in the future. But the numbers to keep in mind here are 2766 and 3101. So last item, or semi-last item I'll talk about over here is on PulseX. I was actually swapping some messages with Art the other night in one of the Telegram chats. I drew this trend line back on June 6, 2024, and we've largely been respecting it. So this is showing the relationship between PulseX and Pulse. And so what you can see is over time, PulseX has been grinding upward, up and to the right, gaining strength on Pulse. So if we continue to respect this trend on this front, then what does that look like for this 1.0? That would mean one PulseX is worth one Pulse, so they will have achieved parity. Based on this trend line I drew on June 26, 2024, that happens around early June, late May, early June on this. And we'll see if this holds true because periodically we have dipped a little bit below this trend line, but by and large, it's been up and to the right, largely respecting it. And also, who's to say it doesn't wildly pick up and accelerate for certain reasons? But I think it's a pretty solid trend. Again, as given I dated this on June 26, we've largely been holding to it. Pretty cool on that front. So, all right. Let's get down to some different elements here and some brass tacks in the core of tonight's content. So what I'm going to do is hop over here to the PulseX liquidity adjustment tables I've been building, because in speaking with some folks and the like, also again, shout out Cryptographics, was talking with DCC, was talking with Boogie, talking with Bubba. I was like, oh yeah, I'm a fucking moron. I forgot Richard is basically God for that chain. He actually directly or indirectly has mechanisms through his team and whatever technologies they're using to effectively control PulseX and the like. So the question becomes, what does the future scenario look like for Pulse under those conditions? And so let me hop over to this tab just to kind of talk through. So we know basically through the SAC wallet, they've got around 170,000 ETH. I am aware there are other whales floating around on chain. But in this particular case, I want to rely just on that particular account, 170,000 ETH. And so the questions we have to ask ourselves would be, what do we project for the ETH price So in turn, we can kind of figure out aspects of the total value of that 170,000. And then how can we potentially look at PulseX being adjusted through different farms and like to incentivize or drive behavior in specific directions? If that 170,000 ETH is monetized, to what extent do we think that would be applied to some of the different pools to either drive or support pricing? And what percentage of that 170,000 ETH would potentially come into play? 10%, 20%, 50%? Because you can't deploy it all at once, realistically speaking, or at least I don't think that would be, let's say, optimal under those conditions for supporting the narrative and quite frankly, for bragging rights and glory. Maybe you're going to talk some portion of it needs to be held in reserve to help support the overall token price, basically to stabilize certain movements on that front. So let me take a quick pause here, see what we got going on with some of the different chats. Grabbing a sip of my Coke Zero Master Race beverage for a caffeine hit. All right, let's see what we got going on over here. Hey, we got George rolling through. George, man, it's good to see you. Thank you for the support, man. We'll have to catch up soon. George is the founder of the Trump Rocks NFT. Go check his project out. And then we got Large rolling through. Hey, what's going on, Large? Appreciate the support. Hit the like for the Twinksters. Thank you. Yeah, so as I get more positive feedback or negative feedback, feedback is always welcome. I appreciate my haters. They are my motivators. It definitely keeps me inspired and motivated to come up with some different angles and some different things. I don't necessarily just want to be a talking head reading the news. I do want to try to provide some level of insight and show you all some different things that we got going on. All right, back to some brass tacks and getting down to some other information here. Let's see. And back we go. So we're back over here. We just outlined, hey, we've got this ETH quantity potentially that could be deployed to drive, adjust, and incentivize certain behaviors and token prices and the like. So the question I think we start to run into is, what do we think the ETH price would be in the future? And there's a few different ways we can look at this. So let's start with in what I would think is, what do we think the total market cap is going to head towards? And then what percentage of ETH do we think will consume that market cap? So if I hop over to the total market cap, just for visual, let's say cleanliness, I went to a 1 month chart on this one. We can take a look at some fib extensions on this. And if I do it for this current cycle, drawing a low in around here, taking a look at that peak that was in the month of March, and then roughly speaking, we can adjust a few different things here, but when I drew this, I snagged this low here around 175 after March. Then we can look at a 1618 extension. Let's just say, anywhere from like 3.6, we got 4.9. That's in trillion, by the way, 4.9 trillion on that. Up through, if we look at the upper side of things, let me just kind of shift this over around. We've got like 8.912 out to 10 plus trillion on this front. So let's say conservatively, we're probably working with like a 3693 up through, let's call it 8.9. So what we can do over here is take a look at some of these different total market caps on this, and then take a look at what the ETH dominance is. I snagged the ETH dominance today from TradingView on this. And so when I snagged it, it was around 13.86. It's 13.83 right now. So 13.86 on this. And what ends up happening, that gives us an ETH market cap, assuming that dominance holds. And again, it may or may not, it may go up, it may go down. There are millions upon millions of tokens this cycle on this front. But assuming we've got 13.86% market cap dominance, if we're sitting at around a 4961 total market cap, that gives us roughly 687 and a half, let's say, $1 billion on ETH total market cap. If we've got 120,380, 459 ETH, which I snagged from over here, Ultrasound Money, and that number will change over time. You can see this was updated 12 seconds ago. Then when I snagged it at 4.9 trill and some change, that gives us 5,700 ETH. If we break a 10 trill total market cap, that gives us 11,513. So what are some of the relationships we're looking at as far as coming up with this price? Where do we think the total market cap is going to head towards? What do we think the ETH dominance will be? And then what will the ETH supply be on that front? And that's how we can start to back into or make some different, coming into some potential projections for ETH based on where we think we will be at in terms of total market cap performance. So in this case, let's be a little optimistic and look at some semi-round numbers on this front. If I take this 11,513 number, a little bit optimistic on that, let's say projected ETH price 11,513 under this condition. So that 170,000 ETH becomes worth 1.95, 1.96 bill under that set of conditions. So let me kind of shift over here and show you some stuff we got going on under these conditions. Let's also talk about, in this case, let's talk about whale benevolence. What percentage of funds do we think might get deployed to help drive token price and or support token price under those conditions? Really drive it, because we're really talking about potentially buying up the token or providing some aspect of liquidity injection. 20%, 50%, 80%. For conversation's sake, I'm going to assume 50%, half deployed, half in reserve. This gives us, roughly speaking, a 978.6 million application of funds to be shared with Richard's true believers under a lot of this. So if I slide this over here, again, shout out Cryptographics. I just kind of redid and rejiggered some of his tables and came up with some alternative counts on this one. So under current condition, if I added up that, as mentioned earlier tonight, the DAI, the USDC, USDT, ETH from PulseX, you can come over here, and periodically it does refresh over here just to get that information, then that gives us around 40.5 million right now sitting in pools for these collective tokens on PulseX. Every time you double the liquidity, you 4x the price. So to double that liquidity, we have to come up to 81.1 million in liquidity, which would 4x the price. Now, what does that turn into? Keeping in mind these lows we looked at over here, are we looking at a day one low of the 2766 or that September 4th low of that 3101? What ends up happening is you would be a 4x from today, but a 7.7x from that day one low and a 6.9x from that 3101 low. And as we look through this chart, you can sit there and say, okay, it's around 978 mil. Let's just say the 649 mil on that one gives us a 1 cent pulse, which is a 256x from today's price, but that is a 441 to a 495 depending on where you're taking that count. So let's just conversationally say, let's be a little more optimistic on this, because 11,513, fuck it, we ball. Let's go 12,000 on this. 12,000, not 1,200, her. And now we got 1.02 billion. Okay, still a little short on that. So the reality of it is it would probably be, I don't know, just spitball this 500 to a 750x, somewhere between 1 and 5 cent pulse. Let's call it a 3 cent pulse under those conditions. And so, okay, that's pretty interesting on this. And so I've kind of got this indexed out. Let's take a look at the other part of this equation, which would be, oh yeah, Richard's God. He controls PulseX. The question becomes, to what extent could he reduce and redirect liquidity? So in this particular case, let's talk about, let's go with a 50% liquidity reduction through shutting down certain farms, redirecting and re-incentivizing certain farms under these conditions. Then, if Richard's playing future supreme benevolent dictator, he's cut the liquidity in half. He controls this 50% of this 2.040 billion. So let's just call it like roughly $1 billion on this to be redeployed on this front. And then, okay, somewhere between 649 and you can see it's a little bit easier to buy up to drive this 4,096 multiplier that's from today's price, but it would be a 7,7900x off of the original day one low under those conditions. So there's a potential to do up to 16,384 over here. So 16,000x and above and beyond. This is all conditional based on, again, where do we think the total market cap goes to on this stuff? So you could see, okay, it would be a 65,000x from today's price. But if this is, let's just say he somehow was able to deploy 2.5 bill, or maybe he's able to reduce and redirect by like 80% on this one, then it becomes much easier to drive up some of these crazy giga chad numbers on this. If it's the 80% liquidity reduction, and let's assume able to redirect the remaining 20% and or directly controls that 20%, then that's a 16,000x from today's price, but that's a 31,000x off the absolute day one bottom. Pretty fascinating and really interesting when you start looking at this. So let me flip back to the chat, see what we got going on here. I don't know if I'm causing a lot of mental meltdown with some of these numbers. All right, we got the sit down rolling through. Hey man, appreciate the support. Hexus, I don't think I've ever seen you rolling through here. If I have, maybe I know you in a different name. Art saying, all I can hear is Richard repeating, could have sold on a double, 4x that. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And one of the things I do want to acknowledge, as these numbers get more and more insane, then you have to recognize there will not ultimately be enough liquidity in the system to get you out. At some point in time, the numbers are just on the paper or on the screen, right? Like, that would put the market cap potentially in trillions under some of these conditions. And there's just not going to be that much liquidity in the system. You're going to see stuff getting out of control. You're going to have to DCA out very cleverly. And that might be a situation where you're taking 10 grand out a day, 50 grand out a day. Keep in mind, as big as your bags are, there's somebody out there who's got bigger bags than you. So like at some of these prices, they're sitting on tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, again, on paper. It's not what's on your or on screen. It's not what's on your screen. It's what you can get out and actually convert into something that you were going to use for some sort of tangible benefit for a lot of us. So food for thought on that front. Minimum price for Pulse in 2025. Do you think a quarter of a penny? Yeah, sit down. I think it's going to peak well above that. Barring Richard somehow being unable to really interact with the chain for any number of reasons, then I think it's going to be well north of that. And maybe I'm just overly optimistic and overly bullish. Let me show you some of the other further madness and some of my mathematications on this stuff. All right, let me hop back over to that window. So under these conditions, again, you got to factor in what's the liquidity sitting out there? What potentially do we have to play with for total ETH quantities? There's 170,000 I feel fairly confident comes into play at some point in time. Where do we think the ETH price goes? To get that ETH price, you got to look at where you think the total market cap goes and what you think the ETH dominance will be. Then from that, you also have to factor in what you think the liquidity reduction and redirection would be on PulseX, because if Richard incentivizes certain movements and certain farm, let's say, direction, some folks are going to be stupid and just forget, oh yeah, I left this liquidity out there. Or people may not move it for other reasons because they want out. Also, too, as these prices are coming up, people are going to be withdrawing the liquidity they might have provided, trying to gain incentive token, or they are cashing out in profits, and there are arbitrage bots. So it's not going to be necessarily this linear. I'm just outlining. I think it's way easier for the numbers to get pumped to reward the true believers to well over a 10,000x under conditions. It is very conditionally possible. We just have to answer, or I think really ask the question and answer the question of what are the conditions which would drive these sort of outcomes? And then let's keep our eyes on those conditions. So expect to hear me talk more about this on my streams and Boogie streams in the future. I might be calling out some of these different data points, data elements, and just so that the community is aware of it. The number one thing that immediately springs to mind, though, as I look at this math, okay, if Pulse goes to something insane like 87 cents on that, there's not going to be enough liquidity in the system for everyone to cash out. Not all at once. So you're going to have to be real smart. And if you're waiting for 87 cents, don't be a fucking moron. Start taking some profits, like at 1 cent, 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents. DCA on the way up, just to be clever on that. So Last one I want to highlight, tying all this together, would be what might some of the other tokens look like based on today's ratios. And as we were talking earlier, we can see we have this trend over here where PulseX continues to gain strength. If this rate of change continues, and we're largely respecting this trend line, then one PulseX becomes roughly the equivalent of one Pulse circa late May, early June 2025. Cool. Let's look at some ratios. So this is a snapshot I grabbed from GoPulse earlier when I punched all this in. If you see Pulse going up on here, you can see the relationship with PulseX. That is based on today's ratio. That is not necessarily the trend line ratio. And these are prices in US dollars, so fiat currency on here. So if Pulse gets up to some of these different crazy numbers on this front, let's just go with, it was a question roughly speaking of, around a quarter of a penny. I'm just going to grab this one because this is kind of the nearest multiple based on liquidity's doubling. Then PulseX is going to be worth, let's say 0.2 of a penny, a little under that. Inc goes to $143, Hex to $1, eHex over here. If we start getting wild and crazy, right? Let's say we hit that 5-cent pulse, then we've got 3-cent PulseX. Inc goes to over $2,000. Hex goes to $16.70, and eHex is around $296. Again, friendly reminder: it's not about what you see on screen; it's about what you can get out. So be prepared to start DCAing on the way up, and for as far as DCAing your profits out. Now, again, let me go back to my prior spreadsheet here. 170,000 ETH. Let's say we hit 12 grand projected ETH price, which probably puts us at a total market cap of somewhere over 10 trillion. And ETH dominance either increases, or we've got a market cap closer to 11, 12 trill total market cap on that front. Also, again, I'm assuming we're talking about 80% liquidity reduction and appropriate redirection on the injections, and then sharing roughly 50% of that $2 bill-ish with the believers, then one bill can get us up to 87 cents. Under those conditions, as the conditions change, so too will the amounts and behaviors needed to drive those numbers. Again, that would give Richard bragging rights to 31,000 plus X for his believers. Pulse changed to 31,000 X on this front. So quick side note, detour on this stuff. Hex did over 10,000 X its first cycle. He's fighting the SEC. I don't see any reason he loses personally. I got to defer to guys like Nuclear Herbs on that one. Certainly the government can drag it out and make that case take a long time. But let's say he defeats the SEC and comes back and to handle some of these liquidity adjustments and farm incentive changes and the like, and throws $1 billion, and the market's right, and he throws $1 billion+ at it. Oh yeah, by the way, anyone who believed in me, they got another 10,000 X plus or a 30,000 X this time. One, that would clearly put him in GOAT status for the crypto side of things, and two, he absolutely locks up his place on crypto Mount Rushmore under those conditions. So if we go to 87-cent PulseX goes to 50 cents, 36,000 odd dollar Inc, and like the numbers just get fucking ridiculous on this front. So name the game here. Some of the things you can watch, not just for we're talking about PulseX, and like Richard Heart tokens tonight. Again, just wanted to quickly highlight. Let me fly through the methodology I used this evening. We took a look at Richard's commentary on his tweet from March 19th, 2024. About how some of the liquidity and the money maker works for PulseX. We took a look at PulseX to figure out some of the overall liquidity values in some of these different tokens. We looked at Pulse for some of the lows. I got 2 different lows we're looking at. We took a look at the Ethereum dominance. We looked at total market cap. And I ran just a quick fib extension on this and looking at some of the possibilities. Side note, if you take a more macro view, the numbers get even crazier for some of the extensions. So food for thought. I'm not sitting here to say bag holding. It may be prudent if you are a believer in Richard to increase your holdings so you can start your DCA out sooner. And the reason I say that is the guys and gals who bought $1,000 of a token and they're waiting to get to that $1 million, I think they're going to potentially have a rougher ride of things versus if you bought 10 grand and trying to get to $1 million, you can start your exit that much sooner under a number of these different moves. And then we looked at the total Ethereum supply under these conditions on that front. That gives us all the values we need to calculate. We have to make some estimations on what we think the reduction would be and what extent would come into play. But you can see that the numbers just kind of get ridiculous. Imagine being, hey, my belief conditions lined up, and I get to tell my believers, they did a 30,000x, 50,000x, 65,000x under being a bag holder and token holder, believing in Richard and what he's ultimately able to pull off. We just need markets to do what we want them to do and generally move in a certain direction. We know liquidity is starting to come back into crypto. There's more money printing. In the case of the US, they have to refinance the debt. There's 1/3 of the debt that has to get refinanced this year. So absolutely, there's going to be a ton of pressure to bring those interest rates down. Downside is normies are going to continue to get crushed by inflation. But I think we're all in a good spot to capitalize and ride the wave to some very significant gains over the remainder of this cycle. So fingers crossed. All right. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. Expect to see me periodically refresh some of this data and talk about it on Boogie's channel and some of the other places you can find me hanging out, such as on Telegram or Twitter. Feel free to hit me up. Again, ton of kudos to Crypto Graphics for laying down a lot of the groundwork. I just tried to build out some extensions on this. All right, let me flip back over to the chat and see what we got going on. A lot of commentary here. Yeah, George is digging the numbers. DCA in and DCA out, damn straight. Are you nervous about the bull market happening in general in 2025? This is my first cycle. It's probably the same feeling in 2020 for people. So I got in kind of, let's say, late-ish, like back third of the 2021 run, like really dove in June 21 and aped some fucking cash in. Am I nervous? Nah, man. Like, it's going to go up. The sector will go up. The question is which tokens in the sector go up. Okay, we're very confident about Bitcoin. I'm confident about Ethereum and Solana. I do find Pulse a little more speculative, but I think a lot of that has to do with media suppression and the fact that Richard's been battling with the SEC for a while. It's not necessarily knocking him or his abilities. It's the government hampering his ability to do things and move. As far as the rest of it, I do hold other tokens outside the Richard Heart ecosystem. I hold things like Fanta. I got thinking too many different things. Phantom, which is another L1 project, which you may or may not be looking into. Also Giga, which I talked about here. I've talked about plenty on Boogie's stream. I've mentioned a bunch in Twitter chats. I'm rebroadcasting the Twitter guys for Giga and Giga Fitness. The Giga guys are at the Olympia in Vegas with Mike O'Hearn and I'm drawing a blank on him. Paulo Costa. Shilling it at the Olympia. And if you actually look at some of the Giga charts and like the Giga holder counts, they've been going up steadily over this week and this weekend. Pretty interesting on that front. But yeah, I do hold other tokens too, just in case one of them doesn't work out. I don't want to be solely concentrated because I am looking for a balance of solid performers and outlier performances. I can tell you my Giga bag has been, I threw in several $100s and it turned into 5 figures, and I haven't seen it at 4 figures for quite some time. So you got to be willing to take some shots on some things on that front. No, I'm not nervous in the least. It would take, I don't want to jinx anything. It would take like World War III or something absolutely insane for me to get really concerned. And at which point in time, if I get the vibe it's going that direction, I have to make some strategic decisions about which bags I'm potentially going to roll back into cash, because at some point in time, it does turn more into capital preservation. So hope that answers your question. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Telegram if you want to have a more detailed conversation on the idea. We got Stimmy check equals BTC. If Richard starts live streaming, we will see a crazy green candle. Yeah, I don't think it's a if. I'd like to think it's a when. Art, Art, I'm gonna be able to afford those private lessons, man, for polishing up my gi and no gi game. Sit down. Yeah, let's get hype, man. Fighting with the SEC makes the project legit. Damn straight, man. Like if it's enough for them to be concerned. And Art calling out that we've got, hey, Jay Waller talking about Hex, Tate Brothers farming on PulseX. Many crypto YouTubers did sacrifice. They're quiet now. Wait till the green candles. Yeah, if you've got enough of enough of your capital is deployed into it and you're confident and you're just kind of letting it do its thing, then you don't need to stress because you got like great bags or other bags. If in your best guesstimate, when do you think the first top would be for RH tokens? That is a good question. You know what? Let me tune in tomorrow night and maybe you'll be able to catch Boogie and I talking about that one. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge on that front. Cool. You got some FTM bullish on Fanta. It's delicious. Yeah, I was thinking Phantom and Giga, which turned into Fanta. Do you think PulseX, PHEX is less risky compared to popular meme coins like Pepe, Ponke, etc.? Are they about 1 to 10? Pulse Latina being 10. Shout out to Pulse Latina. As far as I know, she's gotten away with it. I know there were some groups that were trying to identify her and let's say her backers, but I don't think I ever saw anything else, come in on that. Do I think it's less risky? Well, I don't. I think you bet against Richard Hart at your own peril. That's number one. Two is I do think we will see certain meme tokens just wildly outpace others. Giga's been doing really, really well for me. I know for folks who got it was an SPX, what's it, like 69,000 or whatever, that thing has just gone ape shit. Pepe's continued to do well. Ponke. So Murad talks about this a lot, and you need to find ones that have just a rabid community, which side note, the Richard Hart ecosystem definitely does. And then it's got to be kind of cult-like because quick detour on some of the what I see in modern culture is in times prior, there was a lot more community and a lot more religion and a lot more family. And fast forward to 2024, children born out of wedlock, divorces, blended households, and reduction of religion in North America and the advancement of the state. I think a lot of people have replaced aspects of community, family, and the church with the state. So think about it. Back in old times, when you fell on hard times, right, you'd probably go to your family looking for a place to crash, help out. Hey, can I borrow some funds or can we band together and handle this? Then it would be your more localized, regionalized community and the church. Most people don't go to church these days, and we live in a world where my community is largely digital in a lot of ways for this particular arena. I think people are just really disconnected from a community perspective. And so look for the groups, look for the projects that sure have some solid fundamentals. They're getting a lot of hype, a lot of influencer attention. Green candles definitely help with all that. And then do they have a diehard community, and are they maybe cult-like or inspiring their own crazy religion on that? And I think you can find some decent meme tokens that'll do that. And I think the Richard Hart stuff definitely falls in that category. So hope that answers the question. George, should have listened to you on Giga. You know what, man? I was talking with Boogie and DCC about this, and Bubba Dubs, my buddy Bubba Dubs, who's also in the crypto space. Shout out to the Fat Cats team. The hours I spent in courses, the hours I spend looking at charts, fundamental research, doing all this shit, and a few $100 in Giga is probably going to be what gets me out of my daytime job. It's just, hey man, that's the way the cookie crumbles. But to be fair, I would not have probably been willing to take the shot and recognize the potential of Giga without all that prior experience. So, appreciative of it, and certainly it brought me to the Richard Hart ecosystem and the like. But yeah, man. Let's see. Giga is a banger. I feel like I'm too late for it. So sit down. I think, and I know we're in some of the same communities and groups. I encourage you to look at things like where you think it's going to go and where it's at today. And so, if you think it's going to go to 1 billion, that's about a 2x from here. If you think it's going to go to multiple billions, well, now that gets a lot more spicy. I think guys like Murad were calling it for it to be 50 billion. So there's still some major potential runway. You can DCA into it. It's a classic meme, and I like the message, man. Improve yourself, become better, take care of yourself, get more fit. And again, they're at the Olympia, shilling hard to all your favorite bodybuilders and fitness influencers. So I think it's definitely got some runway in it. Am I saying go ape a fat bag in it? No. My other argument is if I had aped a fatter bag into it, I am probably retired right now from everything, in all honesty. But hey, man, it's all part of the learning experience. You just got to enjoy. You got to enjoy the ride and be okay with how you played the game. Would I consider myself a Hexican? Yes. So I got this at the Pulse Chain conference last year. Shout out to RG3 and the organizers on that front. Met a lot of cool people in the community. So yeah, I would definitely call myself a Hexican. I am holding Hex. Side note, free DCC. I don't know why y'all banned him from a bunch of Hex chats. That dude onboarded me to Hex. He onboarded many people into Hex and the Richard Hart ecosystem. You should unban him immediately. But yes, I would consider myself a Hexican. Boogie dropping some alpha for you. Go follow Boogie. Check us out tomorrow on his stream. Go follow him on Twitter, YouTube, and a bunch of other different locations. He found Giga as relevant with 60-day cycles, but a bit more volatile. And Art saying he wish he got into Giga, wasn't so overwhelmed with my portfolio when I heard about Giga. So if you are in Dollar Cost Crypto and Cultivate Crypto's Citadel program, I mentioned me entering a position back in March over there. So you also could have caught it on my stream and on Boogie's stream. But yeah, you know what, man, there's so many different tokens and it's so hard to track and you only got so many hours in the day. So you got to kind of pick and choose wisely. I need church. Yes, Boogie is a man of faith. He and I have a lot of great conversations about philosophy and life. I am agnostic. I just don't know. I don't know what's out there. I'm curious. George, I would laugh my ass off if Richard was Satoshi. He speaks of BTC code in such a way that makes me think he's very familiar with it. I bet he is very familiar with it. I personally don't think he's Satoshi. I hope that continues to remain one of the great mysteries. I know, was it HBO or somebody had a recent documentary saying it was like, Len Sassman, and a bunch of other people said no. Some other folks have looked at the code that was written and said, we actually don't think, we believe whoever came up with the Bitcoin code was not a programmer, maybe some sort of logical related discipline, like mathematics discipline, but not necessarily a programmer or coder. I saw some speculation, like some sort of mathematician, some sort of physicist, but definitely not a coder, because there's certain things that are kind of kludgy and archaic, or more novice or rudimentary, versus somebody who came from a more programming background would have been a lot more elegant with it. Anyway, hope the moon math is super interesting to the folks that stuck with me through some of the outline of the conditions and how do we hit multi-cent pulse, or like getting close to $1 pulse. Again, friendly reminder here, your broad spectrum set of conditions would be doubling liquidity, but you can also cut liquidity or incentivize the reduction of liquidity or kill farms to make things more pumpable, really just hailing pumpamentals. Then we got to look at, where do we think the total market cap goes? Where do we think the ETH dominance goes in relation to that market cap, which will start to give us an ETH price? And then from there, what percentage of different funds get injected back in liquidity pools? And I was only talking about the 170,000 ETH that are attributable to the SAC wallet. We know there are other whales that are out there. You think if we start seeing crazy green candles, people aren't going to be trying to come in. But you might want to consider improving your bag size and in turn be prepared to DCA out. Please don't be left holding a bag, pipe dreaming for an 87 multi-dollar pulse chain. It might hit there, but can you get out? That's the real question. And let's see, they got one last question, a couple comments here and questions I'll snag here. Imagine George, yeah, cryptos are us. If RH was Satoshi, he'd shit a brick, dude. Never hear the end of it. And what are you buying right now, big homie, or are your bags packed? Well, I can tell you I am in this season's crypto mindset course. I look forward to further info and alpha from Miguel and Charlie on what some of the things are. I am getting ready to start building out my root position. I will probably not be able to snag the lows. Looks like those might be gone, but I don't have any significant root position. So I am actually, the Giga guys might, throw me under the bus on this one. I trimmed a little profit off of Giga earlier in the week, and I'm probably going to use that to fund my root position on that, and just try to compound some yields on that side of things. Did I sell out all my Giga? Most definitely not. I actually trimmed 5% off my bag for that. So I'll throw that over into my root position and maybe some other things. I'm also watching just different movements sit down. So it's not just about the absolute price. I think it's also about risk to reward. And actually, let me do like any charts up I can kind of eyeball. Yeah, let's take a quick look at Pulse over here. So for let's see here, which one do I need? I'm sure I got the right chart. I'm gonna throw this up on screen. Here we go. All right. So the question here is, where do I think potentially some stuff could go? And there's a lot of different ways, and I'll defer to some of the folks who are just way more in the technical analysis side of things. I will look at things like support resistance, and I can tell you I bought the majority of my Pulse bags are packed. Now, if I see conditions changing that make me think Pulse is much more likely to have a hotter run sometime sooner, then I will adjust accordingly. So I would take a look at this and go, okay, where do I think it can go? Do I think, let's just start really, really simple. Do I think get back to this all-time high up here of like, what's this, 3 zeros and a 2.9? Never mind exceeding it? Yeah, absolutely, right? So what does that look like from today? Well, that would be, roughly speaking, we'll call it like a 4.5x on that. So that potentially might be very much worth it to me. Now, if I start, now we start talking like, let's get nuts, right? Like we're going to talk like 1 cent from here. And now we're starting to talk like a 20x, right? Yeah, I just want to make sure my mathematication's right. Yeah, probably like a 20x from around here. Then as we start getting nuttier and nuttier numbers, then the question becomes, what's the probability of that and risk reward? So it's always going to come down to the risk reward curve, I think, for a lot of things. And the more risky I think something is, the less I will allocate to it. I won't necessarily allocate zero, but I'll just allocate less to it. One of these days, I'll probably just do like a separate, I'll add it to the mix. I'll do another stream somewhere in the near future about how I personally manage my overall portfolio and the risk reward aspects of it. Give you a quick hint. It's generally 80% into things I'm very confident in. Not necessarily all in one token, but 80% of my funds I put into things I'm very confident in. 16% of my funds get allocated to things I'm somewhat confident in, and 4% is my degenerate retard kind of gambling bag on that front. So that works out to, interestingly enough, that works out the 80-20 rule, and then 80-20 of the remaining 20%, that's how you get that 16-4. So there you go. Yeah, it all comes down to risk reward for me and what I think is going to happen. All righty. Nelly, appreciate the support, man. Create props on the call for Giga. Thank you. What put you into that coin? What foresight indicators rang the bell for you? So, honestly, it was my meme coin exposure. I did believe we were going to see some memes run. I just felt like I was a little underexposed because I personally felt like I missed what I wanted to do with Pepe. As Art was saying, like there's just so many damn coins out there, and it's like hard to keep track of. And you may only I don't have unlimited money. You don't have unlimited money. We are not the Federal Reserve. There is not an unlimited amount of cash in our pockets on that front. So what put me onto that coin? I went through CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko and filtered for memes. Honestly, part of it too was also Boogie had asked me about this. And if you guys don't have crypto Twitter, like an account dedicated exclusively to crypto Twitter, get a crypto Twitter account. The only thing you should interact with that should be crypto. And the reason being is you're going to have the people you individually follow, and there will be the things you interact with that pop up through your feed. Your feed is curated by the algorithm. You do not want to pollute that with a bunch of bullshit. So that's why you got to keep it crypto only. It had popped up in one of my travels on Twitter. And then I saw it pop up in CoinGecko. This is probably between 10 and 14 mil market cap on that front. So there were guys who got in way earlier than I did. And I was like, oh, Giga, that's a classic meme. My thought process was, oh, I kind of missed the boat on Pepe, but Giga's a classic meme on this. It's kind of low market cap. A few $100. Do I think it can go to a few $100 million? Yeah, sure. So why not throw, literally it was $338 into it and watch it run. And then I took some yield I had some staked Solana and threw that on top of it. And I was just like, fuck it. It is what it is. Let it ride. And hey, it's working out great for me right now, I'll tell you that. But it was a classic meme. It had popped up on Twitter for some of the influencer calls. And I like the message, improve yourself. 100% of the supply was out on that too. So it wasn't like there was this big supply shock waiting in the wings. And the price was right. I was looking for something that was lower market cap with the anticipation it would run, because going from 1 billion to 10 billion is, generally speaking, a lot harder than going from like 10 million to 100 million to a few 100 million. So food for thought on that one. I came across it through Twitter, classic meme, like the message, lower market cap, and max supply was out. So no major inflation on it. And that was it. Yeah, just kind of YOLO'd onto it. So that's also how I found other things. Like you've probably heard me mention AXGT over on Boogie's stream. I was looking for something kind of like in the AI and decentralized science space. That one had come up in some of my travels. I was looking for some intersection of like AI and medicine and real world use cases. And so I looked at that. That was under, at the time, it was like around a 20 mil market cap. So I threw a few $100 into AXGT. Also, I had just watched like Giga pop off, and I was like, oh, I'm going to try to do this again. So a few $100 here all of a sudden becomes tens of thousands, and sometimes relatively quickly. And you're like, oh shit, what am I doing? So depending on your age bracket, what you got going on, personal responsibilities, here's where I'm at now. I want to put in enough money. I want to put in money I'm willing to lose, but at the same time, I want it to be enough money where if I watch it run hard, I'll look back and go, man, I wish I had put in more, right, Boogie? So, yeah, that's kind of the rationale I got. Art's got 1/3 Gala, Root, and Beam, letting it ride. So that to me looks like a good game portfolio. So let's hypothetically say, I was going to put in $9,000 into GameFi. 1/3 into Gala, 1/3 into Root, 1/3 into Beam, and you let it ride. And you go, hey, those bags are packed. And Gala, we know, has historically been like around that 1 to 4 cent mark. So you've been able to gain a lot of it. Root, I think it's been between 1 and 2 cents. I don't hold any Beam. Maybe that's something I'll pick up this cycle. But I'm pretty confident in my GameFi bag with what I got packed. Is Pulse in my somewhat confident bag? I am very confident in Pulse personally. Two different questions that I take away from that is like, am I confident for 2025 for Pulse? Yes, I am. But is that more speculative than something like Bitcoin in my mind, or Solana or ETH? Yes, but that's only because of the court case, which I fully expect the government to try to drag out unless we got a reasonable judge who's like, this is nonsense. Get out of the court. This is such a dumb case, case dismissed type situation. I don't think that's going to happen though. And then there's do I generally believe in Richard and Pulse and the notion of decentralization? Yes, I do. So I think it's decentralized, and Hex is a better Bitcoin. So between that, maybe I don't add to my bags personally, because my bags are vast majority are packed in the Richard Heart ecosystem. But I definitely, how do I want to put this? Pulse is in the very top portion of my very confident or somewhat confident to very confident bag. It's like right in that transitionary band I got over there. W to stakes. Yeah, Diamond, good to see you, man. The staking, especially if it's like stuff you can quickly unlock, really useful. But staking through a bear market for stuff you believe in, huge. Didn't care for Giga until I saw a proof of stake post on X. Thought it was genius after. Yeah, those guys are hilarious and rabid, and they go hard. And there are a lot of real world wealthy ballers in Giga that are making deposits and buys. And again, just watch this weekend coming off the Olympia. You can see people entering the token. It's pretty wild. But yeah, like proof of stakes is hilarious. And those guys are like, oh, I had stake today, proof of stake. Now shut up and do your push-ups. Do I have any ILV? Yes, I most certainly do. I do believe in Kieran and their vision for the project. My bag is largely packed on that. I have left some in liquidity pools to continue to earn me some yield on that front. I haven't really staked any ILV. I think it's at right now it's a great price, especially if you need to DCA down, if you believe in what they've got going on. I know quick detour is we recently saw the open beta or early access, whatever you want to call it, of Off the Grid, which is a very it's a clean shooter. It's like it's on the AVAX network. It's like built on the Gunzilla network, which is an AVAX network chain. On that, there is no gun token. Side note: watch for a gun token. I think Off the Grid is going to be really popular with streamers. They got guys like Ninja, Tim the Tatman already streaming it. It's doing very, very well, and I think it's great for the GameFi space. It's going to bring a lot of eyeballs into it, and I think what Off the Grid is doing is the correct thing to do. They made a great fucking game. The shooting and mechanics feel great. It's slick. It's high tension. It's a battle royale game, 3-player. Visually, it's interesting watching like your cybernetics get disconnected and reconnected with different abilities. They've got the streamers on it. They made a fundamentally interesting, exciting, fun to play game that has the crypto element effectively be invisible. It's all obscured by the game. It's what I think that needs to be a wake-up call for a lot of crypto game teams. You got to make a good, fun game first and foremost. But yes, it's my roundabout way of saying I do have ILV. Check out Off the Grid. Watch for the gun token to come out. We'll see what the tokenomics are for it. And those are a couple of games that are primed to be at the tip of the spear for GameFi this run. Yeah, Boogie. I did to put 3 times more here into Giga as Solana. It's all dipped, but Giga said no, yeah, slipped out of your hands. Yeah, dude, we had so many questions because we were both waiting for a bigger pullback, and it just never came back. Hey, Moonpill, good to see you, man. Rich's lawyers are the same lawyers Elon Musk used to fight the SEC bullish. Yeah, dude, that is like the Avengers crack team, SWAT team, like Delta, SEAL Team 6, Rangers, Space Force, Jedi team. It's going to be wild on that. Sit down. Yeah, I'm a recreational blue belt. This keyword being recreational. Thankfully I'm not too banged up facially. Physically, I am in my 40s. It's so I'm half Asian. I get the benefit of aging real slow comparatively in a lot of ways. But it just gets harder as you get older, man. So shout out to anyone who enjoys contact and combat sports. But it definitely gets tougher as you get older, and it's tougher to learn as you get older. Quick detour. I always find it interesting learning from people who picked up the skill sets later in life. They may not be as like fluid as you see folks who came up, as a kid, but I find they're often better instructors, and they're just more aware of the difficulties that come with learning as an adult. Name one, your recovery isn't as quick, just like from your energy systems, and 2, certainly not injury recovery. When pulse to $1, we would need to hit probably over a 10 trill market cap, and Richard and PulseX, it would probably need to be an 80 cent liquidity reduction, and ETH needs to be over 13 grand. Hey, Brandon, good to see you. And sit down, purple belt. Nice, man. You have to give me some pointers. I know there are a lot of folks in the crypto community who like to roll. Maybe there should be like a crypto tournament. I wouldn't necessarily enter. Fun story. My second tournament was the Mundials. That's another story for another time. So cool. Appreciate everyone tuning in. I am going to get myself some dinner, and hit me up on Telegram, Twitter. You can see all my socials are down below. Appreciate everyone tuning in, and I will see you all again tomorrow evening over on Boogie's stream. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support. Have a good evening, everyone. Peace.